Alright guys, it's Sailor Moon time again. Now before I start talking about the new episode, there is at least one thing I need to bring up that I forgot to mention last time. And that's the CG transformation sequence. It's jarring as fuck. And surprise surprise, clashes with the 2D animation. I get that like CGI is cheaper than traditional animation, especially when you're doing like a sequence with like a character rotating, you have to like do all these little intricate animations to it. But it's a fucking transformation sequence. It's something that you're going to be using every damn episode. You can afford to spend a little budget on it. Now, like, the CG that's there isn't bad. In fact, if you were to take a screen cap of it, I probably wouldn't be able to tell that it was CGI. But, once you see it in motion, it's blatantly apparent that it's fucking CG. So yeah, the CGI transformations, as well as a little bit of CGI that's in the intro, don't like it. It's jarring, it's distracting. Can't believe I forgot to mention that last time. Now that's out of the way, let's move on to the recap for episode 2. This episode is all about introducing Ami Mizuno, aka Sailor Mercury. She goes to a night school for her studying, and surprise surprise, it's run by the Dark Kingdom. So Sailor Moon busts in there, tries to save Ami, and then they discover that she's Sailor Mercury. They beat the baddie, they team up, and that's the episode in a nutshell. Now unlike the first episode, which was really faithful to the manga with just a few exceptions, this episode deviated a bit more. The entire pre-opening sequence with Ami in class, that was completely new stuff. Never in the manga. When Jedi apologizes to Queen Beryl about his failures, he makes reference to being one of the Dark Kingdom's 4 Kings of Heaven. When the manga he referred to himself specifically as the Far East Commander, meaning that the other Kings of Heaven are in different locations of the world trying to track down the Silver Crystal. I found it kind of odd that they cut that bit out. Considering in the manga, I thought them being split up across the world was one of the more interesting concepts that the manga added. I really hope they bring it up in later episodes of the anime. After that, we get to see Jedi summon a monster, you know, just a little bit of padding. This episode lacks a scene from the manga, where Usagi's mom gets scratched by Luna for calling her Bald Spot Kitty. I'm assuming they cut that because this show's trying to go for a slightly more serious tone than the manga, and they're trying to cut back on those little comedic moments, which is a little bit of a disappointment for me. Later in the episode, whenever Ami goes to hand Luna over to Usagi, there's a quick flash of the Moon Kingdom, which is nice little foreshadowing for things to come, which is something that the first episode also did. Now moving from interesting changes that create foreshadowing to an outright baffling one that created a fucking plot hole. In the anime, Usagi finds Ami's crystal disc, and she pops it in her computer to see what's on it. This is how they find that the school is evil and decide to infiltrate it. Now in the manga, Mamoru gets a sample disc, and he's the one that pops into a computer and finds out that the school is evil. So how does this create a plot hole and fuck things up? For those only familiar with the classic TV series, Tuxedo Mask is a very different character here. When in the original, he was the masked hero who saved Sailor Moon by throwing magical roses. Here he's just some dude in a tuxedo and a mask, with no powers, who's out to steal the Silver Crystal. And this is something that the series made clear in the first episode that they were going to be following. So when Tuxedo Mask shows up later in the episode to save Sailor Moon, he originally showed up there hoping to find the crystal and steal it. Now, there's no explanation for him being there, he's just there. And it doesn't make sense with his character in this version. And if you're wondering how in the manga Usagi found out the school was evil, she just walked past it, saw Ami in a window being brainwashed, and realized, oh shit, they're the bad guys. So after Usagi infiltrates the school, things start breaking away from the manga really hard. First off, the manga was really poorly paced in this part, condensing a shit ton of things in very few pages, making it really hard to figure out what exactly is going on. Even so, there are still some clear differences here. First off, the classroom that Ami was in was full of students, which, you know, makes sense, considering why the hell would Ami be in a classroom all by herself? Also, the fight that breaks out between Sailor Moon and the monster is much longer here. In the manga, she just threw out the papers, cutting Sailor Moon up a bit, until Ami eventually snapped out of it and then kind of just went Sailor Mercury mode, sort of. You know, there's no transformation sequence, she just does the mist thing, concealing everyone within the mist. But in the anime, Sailor Mercury pulls her pen out and does the full-blown transformation and actually turns into Sailor Mercury and then does her attack. Sailor Moon doesn't get cut by any of the papers at all. Then the monster started changing tactics to this kind of blunt paper objects that she was beating Sailor Moon with for some reason, and then blasted her with like a paper Kamehameha. Also, we get another slightly comedic scene cut. When Tuxedo Mask saves Sailor Moon, he literally lifts her up, telling her to kick. Usagi yells out Sailor Moon kick and just pops the monster right in the jaw. Here he just saves her from the paper Kamehameha, and she uses her tiara boomerang thing. After the monster is vanquished, Tuxedo Mask disappears. The mist clears and Ami and Sailor Moon start talking to each other about how they're now partners and they're both sailor soldiers. When in the manga, the mist faded, and it was our first reveal of Sailor Mercury. And shortly after that reveal, the two exchange a few words and the manga ends right there. So everything past that point in the anime, that was all added, including the Sailor Mars tease. So how does this episode compare to its classic series counterpart then? Well, it definitely deviates from the manga a lot more than Crystal did. Well, to compare the two, let's jump to episode 8 of that series. Yes, episode 8. For those not aware of the classic series, it had a lot of filler. Like this tends to happen quite frequently, so filler was a must. And we ended up with 7 solo Sailor Moon adventures. So episode 8 is our introduction to Sailor Mercury. This episode definitely deviates from the manga a lot more than Crystal did. Various scenes are similar, but just different. Characters have conversations in different locations, where in the manga and in Crystal, Sailor Moon had 2 extra friends besides Naru. In this one, she has just one short little dumpy friend, which I actually think is more interesting just on the grounds that she isn't just a generic, hot middle school girl. Is it creepy that I just refer to middle school girls as hot? Now, taking all the little changes and just shoving them off to the side, there are some big differences here. First off, Luna thinks Ami is evil, as in she thinks she's part of the Dark Kingdom. She senses some sort of weird power from her and starts investigating her. Then there's the 2 magic pens that they get from the arcade. Sailor Mercury doesn't even get her pen till the end of the episode, and it isn't really a pen. It's just kind of a stick thing, where in the manga and the anime, it was a fully functional pen. As for Usagi's disguise pen, she already has it, because Luna gave it to her in episode 3. And yes, Luna gave it to her. It did not just pop out of an arcade machine. And like in Sailor Moon Crystal, it's Usagi that puts the crystal disc into a computer and finds out about its brainwashing properties. But unlike Sailor Moon Crystal, this doesn't create a plot hole, because Tuxedo Mask doesn't even show up in this episode. And even if he did, it wouldn't matter because he's a completely different character in this series. His whole thing is that he shows up magically to save Sailor Moon. That's his main goal. Also similar to Crystal, this episode also extends the fight sequence. It does it in a different, more silly way. Also, something else it has in common with Crystal is showing Sailor Mercury's transformation. Like I said, in the manga, it really didn't happen. Here she does a proper transformation and she jumps right into being a sailor soldier. She does not skip a beat. She goes straight on the offensive with her bubble spray, and then Sailor Moon hits her with the fucking tiara. And then there was a little epilogue scene that wasn't in the manga, nor was it in Sailor Moon Crystal. So as of right now in the series, Sailor Moon Crystal is being the more faithful adaptation. 1, because so far it's cutting out any filler episodes, and 2, even though it's deviating a bit, it is staying closer to the source material. But does it really make it the best version? I have to say no. In fact, if I had to compare all 3 of them, I would say episode 8 of the classic series was the best interpretation of those events. 1, because it didn't have the manga's horribly rushed ending, and 2, because it didn't have the weird plot hole with Tuxedo Mask. It had a nice balance of humor and action, and overall it felt like a better paced story. Even so, episode 2 of Sailor Moon Crystal certainly isn't bad. It's keeping its trend going of trying to be faithful to the manga while making a few little alterations here and there, but overall keeping the core story intact. I kind of wish it had more of a sense of humor and had a little bit more fun with itself. Got a little more silly, but hey, what you gonna do? They're obviously going for a more serious take on Sailor Moon. Well, that sums up my review, thoughts, analysis, comparison thing. Well, I'll see you guys in 2 weeks, and hopefully by then I'll have a better structure for these videos. Till then, Moon Pride, motherfuckers!